On March 29, 2012, Yangquan police received a call from a 17-year-old young man. He said he had been kidnapped and assaulted by two strangers the night before. Surprisingly, this call helped the police catch a couple of serial killers who had killed 6 men and evaded capture for 4 years. Welcome to Red Eastern True Crime. If you like true crime stories, please subscribe to my channel. Let's dive into this story. In the early morning hours of March 28, 2012, in Yangquan, Shanxi Province, China, a 17-year-old man named Yang had just finished working at a restaurant and returned to his dormitory. Feeling hungry, he went out to buy some food. On his way back, he saw 2 men standing near a car on the corner. Without much thought, he walked past them, assuming they were having car trouble. However, they suddenly stopped him, forced him into the car, threatened him with a knife, and sprayed him in the eyes with pepper spray, blinding him. After a 2-hour drive, they took Yang to an apartment in an apartment complex. They stripped him, cleaned him up, tied him up, and subjected him to a night of horrific torture and assault. Later that afternoon, one of the kidnappers left for work, while the other fell asleep from exhaustion. Seizing the opportunity, Yang managed to free himself from the ropes, quietly made his way to the balcony, put on his clothes, and grabbed a bottle of Coke to quench his thirst. Earlier, the kidnappers had warned Yang not to run away, telling him that they were in a mountainous area in another province. Thinking that he needed something to drink as he might have to walk a long way to get home, Yang decided to take the Coke. Standing on the balcony of the 4th floor, Yang found it difficult to carry the Coke and threw it down. He then climbed out the window, walked down along the water pipe and the neighbor's railing, and finally jumped down, injuring his foot when he landed. Despite the pain, Yang ran to the street and stopped a taxi. Yang thought the kidnappers had taken him to another province, but the taxi driver told him they were still in Yangquan. Seeing Yang's dirty appearance, the driver asked if he had been in a fight. Yang explained that he had been kidnapped. The driver offered to take him to the police station, but Yang refused and decided to go home first. The next day, after discussing the matter with his family, Yang decided to report the incident to the police. The Yangquan City Public Security Bureau quickly organized a team and, with Yang's guidance, arrived at the residential area. Initially unsure of the exact apartment building, Yang remembered the Coke bottle he had dropped, which broke on the ground. He searched the area for the Coke bottle, and just then, one of the young kidnappers emerged from the building and was promptly arrested by the police. The other kidnapper was quickly apprehended. As the police investigation progressed, it was discovered that the 2 suspects were likely connected to 6 cases of young men who went missing between 2008 and 2011. The victims included Zhao Fei, 16 years old, who disappeared on February 17, 2008, Yang Xiaonan, 20 years old, missing since August 7, 2008, Shi Haisheng, 24 years old, missing since August 30, 2009, Ma Qiang, 17 years old, missing since September 2010, Bai Yunlu, 16 years old, missing since May 31, 2011, and Chen Jiang, 14 years old, missing since August 17, 2011. All 6 victims were confirmed to have been killed and subjected to heinous acts including sexual assault, murder, dismemberment, and abandonment by these 2 perpetrators. Yu Zhuoyang, born in 1984, started working as an apprentice in a chemical factory in Yangquan after graduating from high school at the age of 18. The factory paired him with an experienced equipment repairman, Liang Ying, as a mentor. Born in 1968 and also from Yangquan, Shanxi Province, Liang was 16 years older than Yu. In both his professional and personal life, Liang took special care of Yu, who had grown up with his grandparents after his parents' divorce. At first, Yu felt the warmth of someone caring for him. However, the situation took a dark turn when Liang began touching Yu inappropriately, including visiting his dorm room at night. Although disgusted by Liang's actions, Yu chose to keep quiet for fear of rumors and possible repercussions at work. As Liang's behavior became more aggressive, Yu's feelings toward him began to change unexpectedly. Eventually, Yu went from rejecting Liang to actively seeking his company and developing feelings of affection for him. Yu wasn't the only victim of Liang's predatory actions. However, he was the only one who developed feelings for Liang after being victimized by him. Liang used his position as a factory maintenance technician to sexually harass several underage male apprentices over the years. In 2003, after several victims reported the incidents, Liang was arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison for sexual harassment and abuse of minors. While Liang was in prison, Yu got married, started a family, and worked as a laborer at the Yangquan 8th Construction Company. Despite moving on with his life, Yu kept an eye on Liang's situation. When the 39-year-old Liang was released from prison on August 16, 2007, Yu reached out to him. The two rekindled their old connection and began a disturbing underground romance. Yu went from being Liang's victim to his lover and accomplice. On July 10, 2013, the Yangquan Intermediate People's Court held a trial in this disturbing case involving the murder and dismemberment of 6 young men by a chilling homosexual couple. When news reporters arrived at the courthouse, they were told that the trial was closed to the public and that no media coverage was allowed. The reporters then contacted the publicity department of the Yangquan Public Security Bureau, but were told that the details of the case could not be disclosed because the case was already being handled by the court, and the head of the Criminal Investigation Department had set the tone. Unable to get official information, the reporters contacted over a dozen families of the victims to get more details about the case. 5 months after Liang was released from prison, on February 17, 2008, at about 2:30 p.m., he met a 16-year-old boy named Zhao Fei near North Street in Yangquan. Liang tricked Zhao by pretending to know his teacher and convinced him to come to his house under the pretext of tutoring. Later, Liang and Yu asked Zhao to play a game of poker in which the loser would have to undress. When Zhao refused, Yu tied his hands and feet with a rope. They then revealed their true cruel intentions and subjected Zhao to sexual abuse and torture for several days. To cover up their crime, Liang used a pillow to suffocate Zhao, and then they dismembered and disposed of his body. On April 10, 2008, human body parts were found in a river canal, and DNA tests confirmed that they were the remains of the missing boy, Zhao. This tragic event completely shattered what was once a happy family. Due to their busy work schedules, Zhao's parents left him at a young age to be raised by his grandparents. Unable to cope with Zhao's death, his grandmother sadly ingested pesticide one evening when the family was not looking and joined Zhao in another world. A year later, Zhao's grandfather died of deteriorating health due to extreme grief. His father, distracted by the family tragedy, was involved in a non-life-threatening car accident, and his mother developed depression from overwhelming grief. On the other side, the sinister game of the two devils had just begun. 6 months later, on the evening of August 7, 2008, around 8 p.m., Liang invited a 20-year-old young man named Yang Xiaonan, whom he had known previously, to his home. Once again, Liang tricked Yang into undressing under the pretext of playing strip poker for the loser. When Yang resisted, Liang and Yu tied him up and subjected him to sexual abuse and torture. Later, Liang knocked Yang unconscious with a dumbbell, suffocated him, dismembered his body, and dumped it in a woven sack at a construction site on the outskirts of Yangquan. Yang's father sent some documents to reporters revealing that Yang knew Liang. After Yang disappeared, his family suspected Liang and reported him to the police. Despite being questioned by the police, Liang was released due to the negligence of the investigating officers, who failed to see him as a suspect. This lack of diligence led to more tragic events later. More than a year later, on September 2, 2009, the parents of 24-year-old Shi Haisheng received a phone call from his co-worker at the hair salon, saying that she hadn't come to work for several days. When asked if Shi's mother thought he had left because he was in a bad mood, she immediately dismissed the idea, saying her son would always tell her if something was wrong. After a fruitless search, Shi's parents went to a local police station on the outskirts of Yangquan the next day to report him missing. The police said they did not have enough evidence to consider Shi missing, so the police did not open a case. 3 days later, the couple went to another police station in the city, but received the same response. Worried and upset, Shi's mother shouted at the police, "My son has been missing for days, and you're not even trying to find him." The police reassured her, saying that young people often play around and that he'd probably return on his own in a few days. Frustrated, Shi's parents had to rely on themselves and mobilize relatives and friends to search for their son. They discovered that Shi's cell phone had been turned off the night he disappeared. They tried to get information from the phone company, but when a reporter asked if the police had contacted the phone company for information, Shi's mother angrily replied, "They didn't even bother."
这是好像俺丢失的时候，我们一心一意给他帮帮的是，这是再怎么好，我要把这孩子寻回来了。我这是在上这拼，每天起来，每天是，昨天上这个上那个糟个，3天我都没有醒过。
Shi's mother and father never gave up. They searched for their son in different provinces and cities in China, making their financial situation even more difficult. Finally, in 2012, they received news about their son, but it was the worst news they could have imagined. Shi's mother couldn't believe her son had been killed, and for 3 years she held on to a glimmer of hope.
哪怕说我等他20年还能回来看看我。
The victim and their family suffered a devastating blow, while these two evil beings continued to seek their next target. In September 2010, 17-year-old Ma Qiang disappeared. Then, on May 31, 2011, 16-year-old Bai Yunlu disappeared. And on August 17, 2011, 14-year-old Chen Jiang also disappeared. On the evening of August 16, 2011, on a hot summer night, 14-year-old Chen was playing near his home. Around 9 p.m., Chen's father called him and told him to come home soon. Chen replied that he was watching the neighbors play poker and would be back soon. By 11 p.m., Chen had not returned, and when his father called, Chen said he would be home soon. But by midnight, Chen still hadn't returned, and when his father called around 12:30 a.m., he found Chen's phone turned off. After an unsuccessful search nearby, Chen's anxious father waited at home all night, but Chen still didn't return. Worried, Chen's father went to the police station in the morning to report his son missing. Despite his insistence that Chen wouldn't stay out all night, and that it was unusual for his phone to be off, the police brushed it off, saying that Chen was probably just out playing, and told the father to go home and wait. Chen's father didn't heed the police's advice to go home and wait. Instead, he did everything he could to find out what had happened to Chen. He found a classmate who had been with Chen the night he disappeared. The classmate mentioned that they had separated near a residential area next to the Jiangnan Grand Hotel. Chen's father rushed to the area, obtained permission from security to view surveillance footage, and finally saw a portion that showed Chen. Although he asked the police 3 times to view the footage with him, they always refused. 3 days later, the surveillance video from the day Chen disappeared was replaced with new footage. Feeling helpless, Chen's father made many missing persons posters and had relatives search for his son in various cities and towns in Shanxi province. They searched non-stop, stopping only to eat and sleep. It wasn't until early September, about 2 weeks later, that Chen's father received a call from the criminal investigation team. They told him that what appeared to be the remains of a teenage boy had been found on the outskirts of the city. After DNA confirmation, it was sadly confirmed to be Chen. Heartbroken, Chen's father couldn't accept this harsh reality. Between 2008 and 2011, there were 6 cases of murder and dismemberment of young men in Yangquan, Shanxi province. Surprisingly, These incidents did not cause public fear, as they received little media coverage, and the police did not actively seek help or label them as the work of a serial killer. The families of the victims were left to search for their missing sons without any official support. Most of the young men who fell victim to these crimes were from single-child families, making their deaths even more devastating to their loved ones. Leong and Yu committed several murders without being caught, which encouraged them to commit more daring and brutal crimes. Leong decided to forcibly abduct young men walking alone at night, after he found that luring them to his house was less effective. After torturing the latest victim, Yang, while Yu went to work that afternoon, Leong fell asleep at home, allowing Yang to escape. Yang was determined not to be tortured to death by these two monsters, even if it meant jumping off a building to escape. Led by Yang, the police caught 28-year-old Yu as he was leaving the building, and with Yu's confession, 44-year-old Leong was finally arrested. Yang's mother expressed that this tragic event has caused her constant anxiety and lasting emotional trauma. Yu, who was initially Leong's victim, didn't report the abuse to his family, his workplace, or the police. Instead, he willingly became Leong's accomplice. The police never revealed the extent of Yu's involvement in each crime. Prior to these incidents, Leong had served 4 years in prison for molesting underage boys. After his release, suspicions were raised by one of the victim's family, and tips to the police were ignored. Police didn't investigate Leong's home, which led to more young men being harmed. The failure of authorities to properly monitor released sex offenders led to the tragedy of 6 families. Leong was never married. Reporters revealed that he had been molesting boys since his early 20s. Despite the jail time he served, Leong showed no remorse and decided to kill his victims to cover his tracks. It's shocking to think that in a populous place like Yangquan, in an ordinary apartment, in a city where cameras were widely used over a decade ago, such narcissistic and brutal killers as Leong and Yu existed. On August 22, 2013, the Yangquan court sentenced Leong and Yu to death for intentional homicide and illegal detention, and also ordered them to pay a total of 115,700 RMB, approximately $18,700 to the victims' families. On January 28, 2016, Leong and Yu were executed on the same day. Yang told reporters,
我怀疑他是还有同伙他那天是干嘛叫晚上的时候人家说来俩老头了，然后后来人家又说是不来了，然后喝多酒了不来了，怀疑他有同伙。
Yang's mother also questioned the whereabouts of the bodies, noting that some victims were found with only a thigh or an arm. She expressed concern about the possibility of human organ trafficking. Despite these concerns, the police never shared any information with the public. This case is horrifying not only because of the gruesome actions of the twisted serial killers, but also because of the frustration and fear of police inaction. The police didn't even open an investigation after 480 hours of a person's disappearance, and only responded when the bodies were discovered and reported by the public. A few years ago, a widely circulated photo on the internet showed a driver groping a woman in the passenger seat while driving on the highway, demonstrating the clarity and prevalence of surveillance cameras. But despite this advanced technology, it hasn't solved the problem of many missing people in the city. What do you think about this case? Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more crime stories, please like and subscribe to my channel.